Here we are on Labor Day.
Whoa, boy. Here we are. Here we are. We're working. We're putting in the work.
We do what we can for you.
Well, my man, I gotta say, I am happy to be back in the saddle. Um, I kind of miss like the weekly recordings.
Yes.
But
Unfortunately, life has gotten rather busy as of late, as it does. But it is good to be back.
yeah, well, you have a job, I have a job, I have a kid. But that all brings us to the Wednesday release announcement, which is super fun. You used to be able to start your week with us. Now we get to carry you through your week. We'll be releasing on Wednesdays going forward. That really just kind of gives me more time to work the magic and do some stuff and make sure that we actually have a recording. That way we don't end up in a panic mode where we're recording at 7:30 at night or 2 o'clock. I'm reaching into the deep bag of like old edit stuff. We could do homebrew history deep cuts.
Ooh, that is a good idea. Interestingly enough, this past weekend, my alma mater, not our alma mater, but my high school's alma mater, had a alumni picnic, and 2 people, which, I mean, hey, it ain't zero, okay? 2 people were like, "Hey, are you guys still doing your podcast?" It's like, "Yeah, now we're on YouTube."
Wait,
Now
they had to ask?
they did.
That means they don't have their downloads on automatically. I don't need them fans.
I know. I had to correct them. I'm like, "Hey, look, just hit a few little buttons,
Just
get the
subscribe.
notifications, get the updates. Yeah, subscribe. Come on, man.
When people are like, "Oh, I'll listen to your latest episode," no. That's not what I asked you to do. I asked you to subscribe to the damn thing. That way, you are the download that I can count on forever.
Forever. For time immemorial.
The good fans are the ones that don't even listen to the show. They just have automatic downloads on.
It's true.
I said it. There. That's it. That's it. So Wednesdays, that's the new homebrew history schedule. You can catch us on Wednesdays. I feel like that isn't asking too much. If you miss us that much, listen to the show that you got on Wednesday, listen to it on Monday. It's your life. Do what you want with it. This is your life. That was a BBC show, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, what's new? I'm sitting around drinking tea. Reading books. That was the other thing we were going to talk about, which then I think is going to lead us to the series thing. But Bo, I have to tell you, picked up a book yesterday. I didn't go to a local bookstore, which makes me kind of feel a little icky. I didn't support a local business, but they don't have a good history section at the 2 bookstores that are close by. Like their history is like, Max Hastings. Oh, great.
Never mind.
Don't have Sir Max already. I was like, what not to do, and there's nothing new, there's nothing fun. But I did get new and fun. The Plantagenets by Dan Jones, because I'll admit, Bo, I didn't pay any attention to European history before 1500 because I was like, I don't have time to focus on this. I have other things I need to get done.
Yeah.
So apologies to Sam Perez and to Bill Robeson, but I'm catching up on that now. And I guess apologies to Ben Price too, and to Emma, because we were always so short with Emma about Rome. I've just finished not long ago Mary Beard's SPQR. Big fan. But now Dan Jones Plantagenets, I can't stop reading it. So now we just have to find a way to get him on the show, I suppose. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're Dan's like best friends, cousins, brothers, uncles, groomsmen at his friend's wedding, who he met once in college, and it was only a mutual acquaintance through his roommate, who he actually is friends with, that's the time to use that connection.
Hit him up.
Send him our way.
Send him our way.
In fact, our way. What about you? Anything new?
So as of right now, kind of getting back into the teaching thing.
That's right. You have to teach the world's future.
The youth and the leaders of tomorrow. They actually stay the same age. I get older, and I feel it every single semester. I do this horrible thing where I say, how many of you guys were born pre 9/11?
Oh yeah, you got no hands now, huh?
When I first started teaching, there were a couple people that were like, "Yeah, I was born in, like 1999,
Not
2000."
anymore, huh?
Not anymore.
By yourself, being
Not
old.
anymore. And I'm like,
Ugh.
oh dear.
Hmm.
But hey, Southeastern's doing a lot of cool things. It's actually our alma mater's 100 year anniversary, I guess.
Doesn't look a day over 80.
It doesn't. Well, unless you're in like Anzalone Hall, then yeah.
It does look significantly older than 80.
Anzalone is rough.
Some of those older buildings over like by the bio building too.
Yeah.
Those are, oof.
Yeah, those definitely.
They've seen some better days.
Yeah, those definitely were built for students who were like 1980 size, which is not.
I was thinking even before that. Those are wartime.
Yeah, like I'm a big person, and like my right butt cheek just so happens to fit in one. It's
right past the doorway.
Yeah, horrible.
Right through the doorway. I don't know how we're gonna segue this that hard.
Well, anyway,
into our new series that we have coming up in November. So a little bit of time. We'll tease. Just drop it. Just put it right in front of you. Things to think about. Things that are coming up along your way. We're looking at doing a little bit on the John F. Kennedy's presidency and his assassination, or should we say his untimely end? No, it was his assassination, and it was by Lee Harvey Oswald alone, singly, as the only shooter. He did it from the 6th floor of the Dallas School Book Depository, the Texas School Book Depository on Dealey Plaza. That's it. The whole series right there. That's it. We're done.
Done.
Well, we'll just replay that clip in November. See you then. Bye.
A 30-second soundbite. All right, guys, that's it. The Warren Report was right. There are no conspiracies.
And you know what? That's right. The Warren Report was right. There are no conspiracies. And the movie JFK starring Kevin Costner is a fun and wonderful thing to watch, but is a garbage can of history.
See, now we're going to have to watch it and pick it apart.
It is a terrible movie, though. I have a hard time watching it just because I can't get over Kevin Costner being like Jim Garrison with the accent and like, we're in New Orleans. It's like, no, please don't.
No, it's terrible.
You make my skin crawl.
It reminds me of Channing Tatum's character in the Deadpool Wolverine movie because he was like supposed to be this like Louisiana like magician super, and his Cajun accent was dookie, terrible.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the only on-screen depiction of a Cajun accent that I can bear to watch is Eugene Rowe and Band of Brothers. That's about it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And like he's not trying, and that's the best part. And maybe it's that he's British doing an American accent. Like he studied it and actually learned how the vernacular works. I don't know. Well, JFK was assassinated in Texas, and tonight our guest joins us from Texas. That's how you do it. There's a segue for you.
Yeah.
But tonight we are joined today, whenever you listen to the podcast, I don't know what your schedule is. We're joined by Neil Chatelain. He is an associate professor of history at Lone Star College in Texas. He has spent 9 years in the United States Navy, went around the world. He's got a surface warfare officer designation, a master's degree in history from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. And he spent a lot of time, I think, in the Civil War field, given that he is one of the editors for Emerging Civil War. I got to spend a good amount of time with Neil at the Emerging Civil War Symposium back in August. And I have to tell you, as someone who gave a talk where people were upset and were sad because the topic was sad and was bad, people laughed at Neil's topic because it's hilarious. Because what's better than incompetent Confederates parading around San Francisco? Neil, tell us more.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome, Neil.
Happy to be here.
You couldn't have gotten a better intro if you paid for it.
I mean, I'll take anything.
In the mail.
I can't complain.
Just missed the drum roll.
Yeah, we can add it in later. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's what
I can
editing.
fix that in post. That can happen if we're
I like
really set on drum rolls. So Neil, tell me, what are we going to call this episode? I mean, is it Incompetent Confederates Parade Around San Francisco?
I really like what somebody. You mentioned I talked about this at the Emerging Civil War Symposium just like a month ago. And I really liked what somebody in the audience said when they brought this up. They said, "How did this Monty Python comedy troupe of Confederates get away with, get this far?" And it really has stuck with me for the last, 4 or 5 weeks or so. So I don't know if we should stick with something along those lines, but it's pretty hilarious overall.
Monty Python presents Confederate Pirates.
I mean, this is better than Confederacy of Dunces. It works. This works.
I was never a fan of Confederacy of Dunces, so
yeah. But I mean, you get to write your own way forward.
There
you go. So Neil, tell us. I mean, I guess give us how we get to the situation with Confederate gold and U.S. Treasury and the Confederate privateers in San Francisco of all places, because it doesn't. When you think Civil War, you never think San Francisco.
Yeah, so nobody thinks West Coast, nobody thinks California in the Civil War unless they're thinking of, they had a few thousand soldiers and they were sent to New Mexico and that sort of an idea. But there's a huge struggle happening, and it's part of this continental-wide struggle during the Civil War era of who's going to control the North American continent. Mm-hmm. And California has a role to play in that California has all the mineral wealth, as does Colorado, as does some of New Mexico, Arizona, as does Nevada, as does Montana. It's all getting discovered around the same time period. But most of that money is being funneled through California, specifically San Francisco, which is pictured right there. And it's San Francisco is growing. By 1860s census, it's like 56,000 people, something along those lines. It's pretty huge, even compared to cities on the eastern seaboard. So that like 56,000 people puts it as if it was part of the Confederacy. That's city number 2, essentially, in 1861. Yeah. So it's a pretty large urban environment, and it's growing. And like I said, all the mineral wealth funneling through California and Nevada is going through San Francisco. It's also the primary location where people are going to the West. So people have heard of the Oregon Trail. People have heard of the California Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, the Mormon Trail, and so on. Put all those trails together, and what you have is that before the Civil War, maybe like 250,000 people traveled the trail by land. Well, another 300,000 people traveled by water to get to San Francisco, and they did that through some water routes, the largest of which is this thing called the Panama route. You start in New York City, you get on a boat, you steam down to the Isthmus of Panama, which is part of the Republic of Nueva Granada at the time. Walk across the isthmus, or later on, some American businessmen, namely Cornelius Vanderbilt, they build a railroad across. It's the first transcontinental railroad in the history of America, period. Get across to the other side, take another steamboat up to San Francisco. And so this route overall, collectively, you go across the Oregon Trail, it takes 6 months. You go across this Panama route, it takes 4 weeks. And so it's a much faster means of travel. And so all the people that travel these land routes combined, that's the number of people that traveled on the Panama route alone. And there are other water routes through Nicaragua and through Mexico and so on as well. The one through Panama becomes the most stable and the most used. And that's mainly because it's a U.S.-backed shipping company on the East Coast. It's a U.S.-backed shipping company on the West Coast. And it's a U.S.-backed railroad company in the middle. And so it's 100% owned and operated by the United States, not government, but by people of the United States, citizens of the United States. And so it's our capital, it's our enterprise making this thing happen. So that's kind of the big push. Now, since it's so stable, the gold is what's going back to the East Coast, to New York. It's going on this water route through Panama. And by the time the Civil War starts, what you've got is this like system of ships leaving at the same time in New York and San Francisco, getting to Panama at the same time, and then arriving back in New York and San Francisco at the same time. And they do it 3 times a month. It's very systematic. It's very organized. It's on a time scale. It's on a timeline that they actually do keep to. It's very regularized. And on average, the amount of gold on these ships, it's about $1 million in gold in 1860 money on each single one of these trips. So it's a pretty significant amount of money going from the West Coast to the East Coast, where it's being infused into the stock market. It's owned by Wells Fargo and Company, or it's owned by Cornelius Vanderbilt. It's, people that go mine in California, they don't own the mine that they're digging, right? Somebody owns the land rights, the mineral rights, and they're hiring someone to mine for them. And so those folks are, back in the East, or at least their benefactors are, and that's where the money is getting infused.
So, Neil, again, when we think of the American Civil War, we typically don't think of California. We don't think about San Francisco. How did you come across this topic in particular? Because I don't know, this is kind of like the first time I'm really ever hearing about it.
Yeah, I just kind of like put random puzzle pieces together on this. So, during the Civil War, the Confederacy made efforts to try to intercept these gold shipments, either directly or indirectly. Hence the talk about the privateers in California. That's one element of this entire aspect. And just over time, while I was kind of in grad school, I started putting a few puzzle pieces together of, oh snap, CSS Alabama tried to do this, and Raphael Sims writes in his memoirs that he's trying to do this. And so I find other sources, and then I discovered the stuff in California happening in San Francisco, found other sources, just lumped it all together. And it started out as a research paper for a research methods class while I was at ULM, turned into an article that I wrote for the UCLA Historical Journal, turned into a book. It goes from bigger to bigger to bigger over time. But definitely just remembering the most random things as you read through everything, and slight pieces, just if you can remember the right pieces and put them together, you can form a cohesive puzzle. And in this case, it's a much bigger puzzle than anyone anticipated. So
explain letters of marque and privateers, because I think when we think about action on the high seas and we think about stealing gold off of treasury ships, we think of pirates and we think of piracy, and it's arg, shiver me timbers, or our episode that we did on pirates way back, I don't know, was that 5 years ago, Bo?
It seems like it.
An eternity ago. And if you made it through it, congrats, you did better than we did. Did I just diss our own episode? I think I did. Oh well. And if you've made it through the last 5 years, congratulations.
Congrats.
Years
to make up for it, Joe, I did spend quite a number of months off the coast of Somalia as part of Task Force 151 hunting pirates. So there you go. There's some connection.
Well, we're about to pirates. So what's the difference between pirates and privateers?
Yeah, so pirates are basically just guys who have a ship and they're trying to rob people at sea. So piracy is simply just theft on the open ocean. It's theft at sea.
Pirates, guys. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Privateers have this thing which you had alluded to, this thing called a letter of marque and reprisal, which is a piece of paper from a government sanctioning essentially piracy on behalf of that government by a private entity. So
legal piracy.
So it's essentially some sort of legal piracy at sea, to an extent that it's limited. So like if the United States of America issued letters of marque and reprisal, it was against a specific nation state. So like during the Revolution and the War of 1812, the United States issued letters of marque and reprisal against Great Britain, obviously. But that doesn't mean that those privateers who had this piece of paper could go and attack French ships or Dutch ships, for example. So it only sanctions you to attack enemy belligerents that are specifically noted that we are in a declared warrant. So it's actually a really common accepted use of warfare in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. We use it very much. It's sort of the weapon of the weaker power against the stronger power. So we use it in the War of 1812 and in the Revolution. The French use it against the British in the Napoleonic Wars. And what's strange is that it changes in the 1850s, and that's because of this thing called the 1856 Paris Declaration. It's kind of a collection of all the major naval powers in Europe that got together after the Crimean War, where they issued a bunch of rulings that they would all abide by about naval matters, including privateering, and essentially they just outlawed privateering on their own. The United States was not a party to that declaration. We didn't sign it. We tried to sign it in 1861, and all the European powers said, "Oh yeah, you can sign it, but it doesn't count for this Confederate thing. So you can sign it, but it's not like ex post facto, so to speak." So we didn't sign it then. Kind of weird, but what this means though is that we're kind of backed into the corner of privateering. So when the Civil War starts, the Confederacy is a weaker power. They have very few ships. They have a very small naval force. And Jefferson Davis issues letters of marque and reprisal starting in April 1861. And the Confederacy uses them in 1861, but they're kind of backed into a corner of abandoning them over time very quickly. And that's mainly because all the countries that declared neutrality in the Civil War, Britain declared neutrality, the French declared neutrality, Vatican City declared neutrality, Brazil declared neutrality. What they all said was, you can't bring your prizes of war into our harbor. So the British, when they declared neutrality, said, you can't bring, if the Confederacy captured a ship, you can't bring that captured ship into a British harbor. And the United States the same, which means, so privateers make money by capturing ships, bringing them to an admiralty court, and then selling them on the open market for a profit. And that's how people get paid. There is no payment. Not even the crew is getting a wage. Everybody's just getting shares of the sale of the prizes. And so all these neutrality declarations say the Confederates can't bring their ships into a neutral port, which means the Confederates can only bring their captured prizes into Wilmington, Charleston, Mobile, New Orleans, Galveston. And guess what? They're blockaded. So
you start losing those one after another.
Yeah. And so basically by the end of 61, the Confederacy's privateering kind of falls apart. And the Confederacy in 1861 begins its campaign of commerce raiding, where they don't have to capture the ships. They're paying their crew regular wages. And they just burn the ships instead and destroy them because they're just regularly paid sailors employed by the Confederate Navy. So that's a little bit of a difference there. But there are a handful of privateers still operating as late as 1863, the Confederate Privateer Retribution. The one in San Francisco that we're eventually, I suppose, going to talk about makes an effort at it. But that's kind of the overview of how this privateering thing is supposed to work, and then why the Confederacy uses it and why it doesn't work for the Confederacy overall.
And ultimately, we're going to talk about this guy.
So these are the main characters here, and it's a terrible main character when you don't even have a face, right? But everyone says you got your picture taken during the Civil War.
He's got a perfect question mark as a nose.
It's fine,
It's fine.
The main guy tonight is the guy on the left, Asbury Harpending. He's the guy who sort of puts this Confederate plot of privateers in San Francisco together. He's very young, 21 years old when the Civil War starts. He's from Kentucky. He makes his way to California when the war starts. And
he's very competent, incredibly brilliant, maybe one of the greatest thinkers
of all time.
Philosopher.
The foreshadowing, it's intense.
Intense.
So this 21-year-old kid gets to California, and he joins one of these many, secret societies that are all across the North and the West and everything, that apparently, every other person in the entire United States was a Confederate sympathizer. So says all these secret societies, like the Knights of the Golden Circle and everything else. Exactly, right? So he joins one of these, and his plan is to help bring California into the Confederacy. Now, there are a lot of Southerners in California, especially in Los Angeles. And there are a lot of Southern leaders in California. Many of California's government is Southern sympathizers. One of their senators is a guy named Gwynn. He's got a plantation in further east, with hundreds of enslaved people. The head of the U.S. Army in California is Albert Sidney Johnston. You might know him as the guy who gets killed at Shiloh leading the Confederate Army. So there are some serious Confederate leadership or pro-Confederate or pro-secessionist leadership in California. Harpending joins the secret team to try to get California to secede. They actually approach Albert Sidney Johnston, who tells them, no, I haven't seceded. California is not seceding. I'm part of the U.S. Army still. Go away, basically. And then they all go away. And then Harpending, the rest of the secret society folks, they kind of go to the wayside. Harpending's not ready to give up because, it's that wretched stench of youth on his side. And he comes up with this plan with a few other people, literally a handful of other people, to take the money they've raised for this Confederate California, and they're going to use it to go on this privateering ship hunting expedition. So that's where Harpending comes in. Now, for that, the dude wants to make sure it's legal. And so Harpending in his own memoir specifically notes he travels from California all the way to Richmond to go talk to Jefferson Davis, who says, I don't have to do anything and you're going to attack people in California. Go. Good luck.
Have fun.
Passes him off to Secretary of State Judah Benjamin, who says, this sounds legal. All right. Passes him off to the Secretary of the Navy, Stephen Mallory, who says, we can get you a letter of marque. They hand him a blank letter of marque and reprisal, basically say, go get a ship, outfit it, and then, mail us this document once you sign it and fill it out with the name of the ship once you figure out what your ship name is.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then he goes all the way back to California. While on his way back to California, he actually travels on a vessel of the Pacific Mail Steamship Company, which is the company bringing ships from Panama to San Francisco. And so he is basically scouting out the enemy on his journey up back to California, which I think is kind of funny. Gets to California, almost everybody has given up hope on this. Basically,
true believer.
He's only got these two other guys with him, Greathouse and Rubery. Greathouse is another Kentucky guy. Rubery is a British subject who happens to be in California and wants to, get rich. And they start making preparations to get a ship. The problem is it takes them forever to find a ship. So that's going to be an issue. They search in Canada, can't find a suitable ship with the money they have. They search in Washington and Oregon, can't find a ship. They eventually purchase a ship in San Francisco. The ship's name is Chapman. Very small ship, 90 tons. That's the whole thing right there. It's a 90-ton sailing vessel. It has no engines, by the way, so that's useful. It's gonna take these. They round up a crew. They get uniforms. They buy 20 guns and pack it in the hold. They buy 2 pop cannons and pack it in the hold. And they basically are like, all of these weapons are for mining purposes in Mexico, I think. Yeah, that'll work. And they gather together and they're going to launch their surprise assault into the Pacific Ocean. What is it? March 15th, 1863. But it's a disaster for them. First thing, the United States.
I think we should cut to a commercial break and then come and find out why it is such a disaster for them. Does that sound fancy? And then I think we need to talk about how trustworthy Harpending's memoirs are too, because that's a fun little playground. And Bo, I think we could have a lot of fun with a little historiography. I mean, while you're here, you may as well enjoy a quick 2-minute and 2-second commercial break.
Homebrew History is brought to you by Civil War Trails. Civil War Trails is the world's largest outdoor museum with more than 1,600 sites in 6 different states. Civil War Trails can be part of your next family vacation just by simply visiting their website, and you can find the link below in our description, or visit civilwartrails.org, where you can request a free brochure for your next road trip. Whether or not you're heading to the beach or off to Disney World, or maybe you're heading just around the block, you can make Civil War Trails part of your trip. Visit our friends at Civil War Trails. For $5 a month, you can support Homebrew History. head over to our Buy Me a Coffee page where you can subscribe and become a member of the Homebrew Crew. There, for just $5, you get access to ad-free episodes, exclusive episodes with our guests. You get a little bit more bang for your buck when it comes to the whole series episodes. We've got a series coming out, you get the whole thing all in one run, as opposed to having to wait around like everyone else. Join us over on the Buy Me a Coffee page and help support Homebrew History. Remember, for just $5 a month, you make sure Homebrew History has enough. Homebrew History is proud to partner with our friend the bearded historian, Jeff Williams. Head on over to his shop where you can check out some of his great designs. He's got all kinds of great designs just waiting for you, featuring artifacts and objects from all kinds of historical periods, and designs featuring some of your favorite scenes and actors from films and series like A Bridge Too Far, Band of Brothers, Gettysburg, Kelly's Heroes, and much, much more. If you're not already following us over on Facebook, Instagram, and now Blue Sky, check us out. And make sure that you're subscribed and listening to us on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, and on YouTube. And if you're watching that YouTube channel, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll be back after just a few commercial messages.
Look at that. We're back. Only 2 minutes and 2 seconds of your life gone.
Exactly that. And I just realized, too, coming back, this is the Ides of March. It seems that someone doesn't know their Roman history here.
I mean,
beware them.
We already talked about how incompetent he is, Bo. We didn't have to mention how illiterate he is, too.
Don't worry. We're going to see just how incompetent he can get.
Well, now you have my attention, Neil.
He has melted the butter and has popped the popcorn, Bo.
Yeah.
How? So you mentioned right before we went to break that this would be a disaster. Why?
Yeah. So there's a number of reasons this is a disaster. First thing is the United States has this thing called intelligence networks, and when people start buying ships and buying uniforms and buying cannons, kind of sets off some alarms. But it gets even dumber than that. The guy who brokered the sale of Chapman to the Confederates, to Harpending, he sold them the ship. He brokered the sale for it, and then immediately walked into the police department of San Francisco and said, "Hey, they got these Confederate guys. Might want to follow them around."
BT dubs. Just letting you know.
So there's the San Francisco Police Department following these guys. There's the San Francisco Port Authority following these guys. There are revenue officers from the U.S. Revenue Cutter Service following these guys. And the U.S. Navy has a warship, USS Cyan, which you can see kind of in the background there. And they've detailed a couple of boatloads of sailors and Marines to help out. And so it's sort of everybody knows what's going on. And to make it even worse, the plan for the Confederates, they had a cover story here. And their cover story was they are a merchant ship going to Mexico. And their goal is to get to Mexico and deliver goods. So that's just a regular old merchant ship. Well, they had a real plan, which was get to Mexico, fill out their letter of marque and reprisal, and then go out and hunt these Pacific Mail Steamship Company vessels carrying $1 million in gold. Somehow these $1 million in gold carrying steamships would stop with this little boat the size of a bathroom and allow it to be captured. And then they would board it, capture another one on its way up as it was heading down to Panama. They would meet in the middle, capture another one, and then they would abscond with these millions and millions of dollars in gold. That's what their plan is. Now, their cover story is they're a merchant ship, which brings us to the true stupidity of the cover story. They put an ad in the newspaper saying, "Hey, this is the day we're leaving. Anyone who wants to go to Mexico, come to Chapman. We leave March 15th. Well, you know who read the newspaper? Everybody tracking them.
Yeah, only everyone.
You know, it couldn't have been teed up better.
Please come capture us. We are leaving now.
So they gather a crew of about 20 guys for this ship. And, you know, a ship that size needs a crew of about 5, maybe. They've got 20 guys with uniforms. But, you know, they're whatever.
That's not conspicuous at all.
It's fine. It's fine. March 14th, they're all planning to leave. They're all hanging out in bars in town, getting one last drink before sailors go out to sea. And early morning, March 15th, all the crew is present on the Chapman vessel, except for one guy, Mr. Question Mark Face number 2 from the previous slide. His name is Law. He's the ship's navigator. He's the guy who knows the coastline. He's the guy who's going to get them out of harbor, and he's missing. And they're all debating, do we leave? It's early morning, dawn is happening. And before they leave, well, you can see in the picture there, the San Francisco Police Department rents a tug, charters a tug, and heads on out and captures the ship. USS Cyan sends out a couple of boatloads of sailors and Marines, captures the ship. The Confederate leaders, they're like ripping up documents, trying to burn documents, and all the common sailors, the Southern sympathizers, the regular sailors for this privateer, they're just kind of sitting below decks waiting to see what happens. In the middle of all this, that one dude who was missing, Law, he's like waving down ships on the pier, and he's like, hey, can one of you bring me to that ship over there? And they just arrest him instead too. So like everybody gets arrested, the ship does nothing. And the whole privateering adventure is over before it even begins. The ship is brought to the Mare Island Navy Yard, which is the only big Navy yard for the United States on the West Coast, and the only place with a dry dock on the Pacific coastline for the whole coastline at that point. And then everybody's locked up in Fort Alcatraz Island, a U.S. military installation. They're locked up there, and they're figuring out, what are we going to charge these guys with? Piracy? That sounds like a good option. They end up charging everybody with violation of the Second Confiscation Act. Giving aid and comfort to the rebellion is the charge. And not everybody gets charged. All the common sailors are released on their own recognizance, and Law mysteriously is not charged either, and will show up as a witness for the prosecution in the middle of all this. So,
turncoat.
Somebody's either a turncoat, or he was always a turncoat and, just conveniently never showed up at the right time, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They get put on trial late 1863. I think it's about September 1863. And the trial itself is a comedy show. Everybody, it's a disaster. People are constantly changing their arguments. The guy who's the judge overseeing the trial is named Stephen Field. He's a member of the U.S. Supreme Court. He's the judge for this. And the defense counsel, the prosecution shows up. They lay before their argument. They've got witnesses. They've got the informant. They've got Law. They've got documents that they captured on the ship. They've got uniforms they captured on the ship. One of the documents they captured was the letter of marque, which was ripped up into pieces that they glued back together. Another one was a proclamation written in Harpending's handwriting calling on the people of California to revolt against the United States. So, circumstantial evidence at best, I would say.
Yeah. That is absolutely bizarre. I mean, this just seems like such a comedy of errors. And so, Neil, I guess my question is too, is like, what actual impact does this have on, I guess this in particular, the San Francisco incident, have sort of on the overall U.S. war strategy? Yeah,
so there are some real implications. These guys are found guilty. They go to jail, though. They get out after a few months because they just all say, I'm sorry, and take an oath of allegiance, but whatever. There are real, sorry, my bad. There are real impacts here. Some of them specific to California, some of them on a wider scale overall. The first big impact is both the military, the U.S. Army, and the U.S. Navy are going to take efforts to protect California. They have realized the California coastline is threatened. If these random dudes who are so incompetent can get that close to launching a real attack, what if CSS Alabama shows up all of a sudden? Or what if some of these Confederate ships in Europe make their way to California and start blowing the town up? Like, this is a real threat. And so everybody starts coming up with their own ideas. This is the Army's solution. Their solution is to take gigantic versions of USS Monitor's rotating turret and put it on both sides of the Golden Gate. There is no bridge at the time, of course. But I think the picture stands for itself with its own.
I like the Photoshop work that you did here. This is
It's
very
not even
reminiscent of
that's just
season
straight
1
up
homebrew history.
copy paste, you know. But these things are supposed to house 20 cannons, be 100 feet wide, gigantic turrets. Obviously, it doesn't work because that's ridiculous. And so the U.S. Army's fallback plan after this is to do nothing, which is what they do. They just basically say, well, we'll keep Fort Alcatraz garrisoned, and we'll kick some people off Santa Catalina Island in Los Angeles, and that's fine. And that'll be fine. So that's kind of the Army's solution, which is we'll figure it out. The Navy comes up with some real solutions. Step 1, the Mare Island Navy Yard is reinforced with a battalion of U.S. Marines, and the shipyard workers at the Navy Yard are drafted into a militia to also reinforce the area. So the Navy's taking some real action. On top of that, though, is the Navy is going to send an ironclad warship to San Francisco to defend it. Pretty cool. It's like those giant turrets, except, on a moving platform. Perfect. And San Francisco Bay is in an enclosed bay, so even better, right? The ship designated to go to San Francisco is the one photographed here. It's USS Comanche, and it has its own, let's just say, odyssey of stupidity. The ship is built in New York in 1862, and then they go, oh, wait, now that it's built, let's send it to New York. Oh, let's send it from New York to California. Well, you can't send it through Panama, no canal, so they got to send it all the way around, Cape Horn. But once it's finished building, that's when USS Monitor founders in a storm around Christmas time, New Year's time, 1862, off of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. So they basically say this Monitor-style warship is not going to make it around Cape Horn. So what they do is they go, I've got the perfect idea. It's built. Let's disassemble it and put it on a ship, and then we'll put like little Lego erector instructions on top of the boxes of all the pieces. They put it on a merchant ship named Aquila. They send it around Cape Horn. It gets to San Francisco in November 1863, which is right around the time the trial ends. Right after docking in San Francisco, the merchant ship Aquila sinks in San Francisco Bay from a storm. And all the pieces are now at the bottom of the bay. They send divers to recover the pieces, but then the divers basically are getting in fights with one another over whose divers are going to do this. So the Pacific Mail Steamship Company has divers. The U.S. Navy sends divers. The people who built and financed the building of USS Comanche back in New York, they send their own team of divers. Everybody's yelling at each other over who's responsible. It takes them 6 months to salvage the parts. And then it takes them another 6 months to build the ship. And so this is a picture of Comanche being launched from its dry dock for the first time. That's November 64. And then it takes them another 6 months to get the turret on top and to load it and arm it and train the crew. So, this ship to protect San Francisco, it's right on time. It's commissioned May 65.
Perfect.
Which, in actuality, is perfect timing because right around that same time, CSS Shenandoah is prowling Alaskan waters. And so, essentially, it's the at-bat pinch hitter for if that Confederate raider shows up all of a sudden, which it chooses to not because it's starting to capture newspapers saying, hey, the war ended a few months ago, right? So they kind of give up and go back and sail around the world to Liverpool where they surrender. But regardless, my point here is the Navy does take some tangible efforts to protect San Francisco. I mean, this ship is still protecting San Francisco in the Spanish-American War. It's still operating in San Francisco Harbor as a civilian coal collier until the 1930s. So it ends up lasting a long time. And its impacts go a lot farther than what people may think. Other impacts for the war involve the money, the gold. So the gold isn't captured by the Confederates here. The Confederates take other activity to try to intercept this gold in the Atlantic Ocean and the Panama Isthmus, in New Mexico and Arizona in 1862 directly. None of it works. And essentially, the United States government, through good intelligence, networked through their army and networked through their navy and networked through their diplomatic corps, they organize protective measures to stop every Confederate push wherever it occurs. The U.S. Navy is going to convoy the ships carrying gold in the Atlantic Ocean. The U.S. Navy is going to send ships to Panama City to basically sit there and stand guard as essentially a fleet in being in Panama. Definitely not something that happens typically to neutral countries, but hey, whatever, it's okay. And as the chart kind of there shows there, what happens is that before the Civil War, the United States of America was carrying $35 to $45 million in gold from California to New York every year in the years before the Civil War. During the Civil War, the United States government will carry $35 to $45 million from California to New York during the war. And just something to keep in mind, when the Civil War starts, the United States Treasury, its gold reserves is only $72 million. So every year is another half of the U.S. Treasury's gold reserves. The Confederacy's gold reserves at the start of the Civil War is $500,000. So even capturing one of these ships will triple the Confederacy's treasury, which is why they're after them so much. But like the real takeaway here is that the United States of America does some tangible actions to intercept Confederate activity before they can make any substantial captures against this mineral wealth of the American West. And that mineral wealth is going to be used to finance essentially the U.S. war effort. It keeps the stock market stable. It limits U.S. inflation. It's all the backers in New York that are not saying, let's not invest in more ships and armies. Instead, they're saying, let's invest in more ships and armies because they're keeping my money safe. And so the real takeaway here is that, it's a funny story with the Confederates seeming incompetent here. In other areas, they're less incompetent on these attacks against these gold routes. But the United States takes some real tangible efforts to safeguard its control of this mineral wealth, which keeps them well supplied in money for the war, which helps them win the war, obviously. And that's the real takeaway on why does California even matter during this war, and what's so important about a few random people in California trying some of these desperate, high reward, low risk actions that fail pretty miserably. The stakes were pretty high for if the Confederates would have been successful, it could have drastically altered their ability to buy things overseas or stabilize their economy a little bit longer, which could prolong the conflict overall.
And Neil, listeners and viewers can read all about it in Treasure and Empire in the Civil War, the Panama Route, the West, and the campaigns to control America's mineral wealth. And that is found right there in your hand and in all good bookstores, online, on Amazon, wherever you can send it, buy it, and send the money to Neil. There you go.
I'm a fan of that statement.
Yes.
Bo, I think you know what time it is.
Yes. So, Neil, when it comes to, Confederate privateers, the sort of, funny gold rush from the Confederate, side of things, what have you found, kind of reading up about, some of these events that you find to be, or what is something that people misinterpret? Because that's kind of what boohickey is. Boohickey is bad history. It's something that's just absolutely made up, something that is just completely rubbish. What is something that you have found that is boohickey that's surrounding that of Confederate privateers?
As far as this incident goes, the most boohickey thing I could probably come up with is Harpending himself and his memoirs. They're pretty bad, but they're some of the only firsthand accounts we have of this incident. Let me give you a good example of Harpending's memoir. Remember, I told you he went to Richmond, Virginia to get his letter of marque and reprisal, and then he came back to California. Well, in the middle of that, he, instead of rushing back to California to make money, he decides, according to his memoir, that he's going to go leave Richmond, Virginia, and he arrives just in time to participate in the Battle of Shiloh.
Oh, yes.
Out of nowhere. And he insists that he was on like PGT Beauregard's staff and that he was present when Johnston was killed, and he advised Beauregard in the middle of all this. Keeping in mind, Beauregard listed a laundry list of volunteer aides in his battlefield report for the battle. that are in the ORs, and guess whose name isn't on the list?
Crazy.
Mysterious, right? So like, some parts of his memoirs we can confirm things on. Other parts of his memoir is he seems to be, elaborating a little bit too much. And I mean, this is a guy who, after the Civil War, is involved in the Great Diamond hoax of California in the 1870s. This huge bamboozling of money that, like, George McClellan invested money in this thing and got caught off on it. And, there's a whole ridiculousness. So
what you're saying is he's an incredibly trustworthy source that George McClellan would have relied upon. And if George McClellan relied upon him, we should all rely upon him.
Well, and his memoirs were published in like the 1890s, 30 years later, plus.
What was everyone's fascination with Shiloh and wanting to be at Shiloh? Because when you think about all the stories that are out there, it's like everybody wanted to be at Shiloh, everybody wanted to fight at Shiloh. We did our episode on the Great Locomotive Chase Bow all the way back in the Wayback Machine, and even the cover story for why the Raiders were doing the raid was to go to Shiloh. And it's like, what is the freaking fascination with this?
There's a Civil War and Navy comparison here, and it's, if you read obituaries of Confederate sailors, according to the obituaries, approximate of the crew of CSS Virginia in the Monitor versus Virginia ironclad duel, 300 Confederate sailors on the ironclad. And of those 300 Confederate sailors, 150 of them are actually soldiers that were loaned from the Army. But of those 150 sailors on the ship, if you read the obituaries, approximately 500 people were on the ship. There's everybody claims that they were there.
Bo, it's like those days when I would give tours at Carter House, and guy would be like, "Well, my great grandfather," they all talk like that. "My great-grandfather rode with Nathan Bedford Forrest." Yeah, you and like 8,000 other guys. And if that was the case, Forrest would not have lost most of the battles that he fought.
Did he ride with him for a day? Because maybe he had 8,000 guys for like a week.
over a 4-year period.
Yeah. And I think part of that too is, especially when it's like memoir stuff, is, you want your history to be sexy. Nobody, you don't want to put down that you were, with some obscure corps commander, and it's just like, no, everybody knows Beauregard, So, and I was next to him. I was his right-hand man. I washed the man's back,
the cup that Johnston held up and said, "Let this be my spoil." That was my cup. That was my cup.
It was my cup.
Off of my chest.
It makes sense. To go back to your Boohickey question, though, as far as this larger war on gold and commerce and treasure that I've kind of like turned into this book idea, the real answer is the boohickiness of it is more that nobody's really heard of any of this. And this was a 4-year sustained campaign of the Confederacy sent an army to New Mexico to try a way to get mineral wealth. They sent all these ships out onto the ocean. Every Confederate commerce raider had orders: capture these ships from California if you can. They sent teams to Panama. The Confederacy was well invested in this, like I said, low risk, high reward campaign, and nobody's really heard of it. And it's the first time the U.S. Navy ever sustains a continuous convoy system. It's the first time the U.S. military is getting involved in Latin America in a bigger way, besides Mexico, but like getting involved in like a non-wartime neutral capacity, sending soldiers and sailors ashore. It's really setting the stage for late 19th century expansion into Latin America, the whole Alfred Thayer Mahan ideas and concepts that are going to generate over the next couple decades after the Civil War. So like my big thing is nobody's ever heard of this, and that's fine, because it's not the Battle of Gettysburg or the Battle of Shiloh, which is great, but it had this much larger impact than people think, and it may not have impacted the fact that the war ended in April 1865 or whatever that people want to argue. But this campaign is the United States continuing to enforce the Monroe Doctrine during the Civil War. It's the real example of the United States saying, we're not giving up on the continent just because we're fighting ourselves on this continent. Right. And the result is we end up being the continental power after the Civil War. largely because we keep the United States intact.
So Neil, do you think there's still like maybe obviously naval accidents, shipping accidents happen? Would you reckon that there are still a few treasure ships that may have sunk somewhere between New York, Panama, and California?
Yeah, so we know some did sink. One sank in 1862. That was the Pacific Mail steamer Golden Gate. It had $1.4 million in gold. It was recovered. The ship was not recovered. The gold was recovered when they sent divers. They did not recover the 100 bodies, though, from the crew and passengers. SS Central America was an Atlantic and Pacific mail steamer that was sunk in, 1856, 57, very famously, and it was carrying $1 million in gold. They've recovered that money. I'd probably go out on a venture to say that at this point, if the ships sank with the gold in it, they recovered the gold. And that's largely because they knew where the ship sank and they wanted their money back. It's not like one of those Spanish treasure galleons that was lost 400 years ago and nobody knew exactly where it was. I mean, they knew the transportation routes, and somebody got off the boat and survived and said it sank 200 miles off the coast of here, and they would send people to go find it.
See, I was off distracted looking for a book. The only other book that I know about other than yours that even mentions this is Don Fraser's Blood and Treasure. Like that's that and like Sibley's War. Like that's the only things source wise that even I think mention
it. Yeah, there are some sources that go into it. John Kemble wrote a book on the Panama route, which came out in like the 1930s and 40s kind of time period. Peter Pyle wrote a book, The Panama Railroad, which came out maybe like 3-4 years ago, which is just on the history of building that railroad there. But like as far as Civil War documentation on this, there's really not a whole lot. Stuff with Sibley's New Mexico campaign talks about that, but they don't really talk about the general broader impact of the naval aspect of it, because that's not the scope of what they're looking at in their analysis. Just like in my book, I only cover Sibley in like a chapter and a half, just because there's a whole lot more of a story there that I wanted to tell. But yeah, as far as Civil War sources, that you got to go to the primaries, the primary documents, the ORNs. The very first report in ORN Series 1, Volume 1 is a report on the transportation of these gold ships. The very first document in the entire ORNs is,
wow,
the Civil War has begun, and what are we doing to protect these things? Which I found pretty fascinating, just because I hadn't realized it till I started looking myself. But it's memoirs, it's random snippets, because I mean, Raphael Semmes writes, a 900-page memoir and mentions this gold stuff on maybe like 6 pages. And so unless you know what you're looking at and kind of can puzzle piece everything together, it's pretty obscure stuff. But when you do puzzle it together, it's a lot bigger than people think.
Yeah, I have to feel like there's a lot of, I know, Bo, I've talked to you about this, where like I'll come across a really cool newspaper article that I feel like is unrelated to anything else that I've worked on. I was like, oh, well, let me just file that away. And then 6 months down the line, I'll find a companion story to that. It's like, oh, actually, now this makes a whole lot more sense. And then I put those away and I don't touch them for like a year. And I read something incredibly obscure that should not trigger this. I'm like, whoa, but I have papers about that.
Wait.
This is 100% that. And the newspapers helped me a lot, because you know what every San Francisco newspaper would say? Hey, this ship left with this much gold on this day. Right. And you know what every New York City newspaper would say? Hey, this ship arrived with all this gold. I made a chart of all the ships carrying gold in the Civil War, and let's just say it's like 50 pages long of just every possible piece of info you could gather from it. And that's kind of how I figured out where the transportation was happening and the amounts and the totals and what ships were being escorted and all that. It's pretty crazy stuff. But it's a lot of just like old-fashioned micro puzzles being put together to form a bigger picture. I mean, I spent 3 months straight looking at just those newspaper reports to make a chart so that I could get a bigger picture.
And that's why we love you. Bo, what's it time for?
Thankfully, it is what is, and because I have probably for the first time, arguably one of the most unique drinks of what's in my cup.
I hope you say water.
So we'll see. So I'm going to save that for last, and we're going to be good hosts. We're going to ask Neil. Neil, what is in your cup?
All right. So I've gone through and listened to the last several of the episodes, and everybody's been saying water lately.
Yeah, bunch of losers.
So I'm gonna change it up here, and I'm gonna say that what's in my cup is dihydrogen monoxide, which, if you pay attention, is water.
Oh, we do a little chemistry around here from time to time.
My wife's a chemist and a corrosion engineer, so
That's amazing.
Kind of no other choice but to speak in periodic table speak.
That's all right.
Well, I'm sure you know what the periodic table thing is for gold is, and I had what was it, maybe seventh grade science teacher that said you'll never forget the letters that are indicative of gold on the periodic table. It's AU. Say AU, come back with my gold. I'm like, that's silly. I hate that, but that also tickles my sense of humor. So
there you go,
Joey. What you got?
Well, I'm here to bore you. I have tea. A nice ending of the day tea.
Well,
what's in your cup?
Before this episode started, we had a very unique conversation about where I was this past weekend.
Careful.
I was in New Orleans, and as New Orleans goes, that city just sometimes can weigh heavy on you. I spent a lot of time drinking espresso martinis, and I figured that maybe, and I'm kind of on the recovery aspect because it wasn't that long ago that I just turned 30, and drinking like you're 23 at 30 doesn't work.
No.
So I thought maybe, perhaps, a little hair of the dog that bit me might go a long way. But I have to get up and be an educator at like 7 a.m. tomorrow.
You got 12 hours.
Yeah, figured not. So what I have in my cup is some liquid IV, strawberry flavored, which for the persistent alcoholic on the show is saying a lot. So,
the only.
Yeah. So cheers to that, a liquid IV, thank goodness. The founding fathers of this nation, this is the dream that they dreamt, that a hungover American could drink a strawberry-flavored hangover cure.
You didn't want to just get like a bowl of Yakamain and call it a even?
Well,
it's also for a reason.
The night's still young.
Night is still young. I only have a whole vat of it frozen in our freezer. So Only. Well, this has been great fun. Again, Neil, the book, out wherever you can find it, right? You don't care where they're going to buy it, but it's Treasure and Empire in the Civil War, the Panama Route, the control for mineral wealth in the Civil War. I enjoyed this talk tonight as much as I enjoyed your talk at Emerging Civil War. And I think the reason I was sold on this was you walked up to me afterwards and you're like, I got to pick the time that I wanted because I wanted to be before lunch and before your talk because you're going to make them all sad.
I got a comment on the feedback of all that. Somebody was like, this person, you can't joke about war like this. This is ridiculous. He's obviously not a fan of the South. That was the comment.
What?
Okay. You do have to make a joke about it because if you don't, you just cry all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, people used to ask, like, they'd ask silly questions and I'd answer in a silly way. And they're like, oh, do you really think you can joke about stuff like that? I mean,
yeah.
I don't. I can just tell you the truth and make you sad.
Like, I don't know. Joking seems to be the only way the Navy does any sort of formal discourse. So.
It's true. This is true.
Anchors away, my boy.
And on that note, as Bo sings us off, we'll catch you next time, and we'll catch you on Wednesday, because that's where you'll find homebrew history from now on. Until next time, cheers, everybody.
Good night and good luck.
As much as you need at this point. As much as you need.